Hello and welcome to another edition of the Paul's Body Engineering Podcast. Can you believe we are middle of April? In fact, we're 3/4 of the way through April. I've underestimated where we are. It's the 20th today, which means we're on the precipice of winter. And as most people can probably feel, particularly here in Australia, we're starting to feel the cooler mornings, the darker mornings, and that turn of weather. So it's a beautiful time of the year, but it also makes you think, where are you with your fitness journey? How far have you come this year? When January came about, you got through Christmas, you got through New Year's, you probably made yourself a promise about improving something or making some more consistent approaches or just chasing some bigger personal goals. Where do they sit at the moment? What does that look like for you? Have you achieved them? Have you not? Have you struggled? Have you taken ownership of where you're at? Have you reached out for help? You know, I love the saying of, if you were going to achieve some goals and you set about that at the start of the year and you haven't achieved them yet, well, you would have achieved them by now if you didn't actually need help. So maybe you do need help. But anyway, that's not the point of this podcast. The point of this podcast is to talk about breakfast. This is an ongoing debated topic, and my professional opinion regarding breakfast and the question around should you skip breakfast or shouldn't you skip breakfast, well, my opinion is that you shouldn't skip breakfast, okay? And this is what I want to talk about today, and I'll title this podcast, Why You Shouldn't Skip Breakfast. And the main reason being is we need to start the day fully fueled, right? So when we wake up in the morning, more often than not, and I'm not going to try and sound sexist here, but a lot of females in particular, and look, granted, 90% of my clientele are females, so this is where I sort of draw a lot of these conclusions from. You've got a fairly big case study to work with there. A lot of individuals will not feel hungry when they wake up, and that's understandable, okay? You've slept all night, first thing in the morning you don't feel like doing is eating. Now, granted, if you're in a calorie deficit, it's probably a different situation. So there's a whole nother argument there in terms of whether you are in an actual deficit or not. If you are in a true calorie deficit, chances are you're going to wake up and you're looking forward to breakfast because you're hungry and you're famished and you want to have a substantial meal to start the day. If you're not in a deficit and you're not hungry, well, you're not thinking about food, or you're not regimented and have a routine around when you eat, then chances are you're going to skip breakfast and move to morning tea or an early lunch, because you're not going to actually eat until you are reactive from an hunger cue. And this is how a lot of people actually react. This is how a lot of people work their days, is that they don't eat until they're actually hungry, until they actually get that signal from their brain or their stomach and says, right, it's time to eat. So if you are one of these people where you naturally skip breakfast because 1, you're short on time, 2, you don't feel like eating, and 3, you've just been doing it for a lengthy period of time, stop what you're doing. You need to be eating breakfast, and I'll explain why. So first step is, let's see if this scenario sounds like it rings true to you. So you skip breakfast, you end up eating at say 11, you have an early lunch. Okay, that ties you over, and it could be, I don't know, a salad or chicken and rice, or or maybe it's a wrap or something like that. Then it gets to about 3 or 4 o'clock and you're pretty hungry. So then you eat again. And then you get home, and if you're a parent, you're cooking dinner. If you're not a parent, you're still thinking about having dinner around 6 or 7, but you're not super hungry because you've only eaten at 3 or 4. So 3 hours later you've eaten, and you've probably eaten a substantial meal. But you get home, and if you're cooking for kids, you're probably quite hungry, right? So you've eaten at 11, you've eaten at 3, you get home at 5:30, 6 o'clock, and you're getting pretty peckish, and you're getting irritable, and you're getting emotional, and you want to eat dinner. And it's because, it's because your whole day is thrown out. And I see this a lot with my kids, right? And kids are different because they eat based on cues, and we're not going to question that. But my girls in particular often will skip breakfast for the sheer fact that they're not hungry. And I try and explain to them the reasons why it's important to eat breakfast, but they don't listen to their dad. But anyway, what will happen is they will eat an early lunch, and then they'll eat an early afternoon tea, and they'll get home from school and they're starving, and they'll eat again, and then they won't eat dinner. And this happens ongoing, and that's a whole nother discussion. But it is also an example of what adults do. Because they're so hungry in the afternoon when they get home, they're not actually prepared to wait for dinner. They snack, and then they don't eat their dinner. or they push their dinner out, or their dinner is not substantial to their calorie needs. They reduce their protein size because they're not hungry. So you can see how it can really unravel throughout the day, all because you have skipped breakfast. But if you start the day correctly with a high protein breakfast, and a breakfast that's going to provide you with energy, it's going to provide you with fuel to make you think, and clarity around your creative thinking and your ability to think objectively and avoid conflict, and think logically rather than think irrationally or emotionally because you're hungry. So that's going to start your day off. If you're training in the morning, you should never train fasted unless it's like 3 a.m. or something like that. My personal opinion around training fasted is that yes, you can do it, but it is not optimal by any means. It's like a car running with an empty fuel tank. It's not going to go very far, right? There might be a little bit of petrol in the hoses and the bits and pieces of the engine. I don't know cars that well, but you get my point. There's going to be a little bit of fuel left in the system for you to start it up and probably get a couple of k's down the road. Then it's going to conk out. The human body is no different. If you're running on empty, you're relying on what you had for dinner the night before. So if you're relying on what you had the dinner the night before, most of that is burnt through the night when you sleep. You burn a lot more calories than you realise when you sleep. And if you've had a really good sleep, chances are you're going to wake up and you're empty. Your tank is empty. Therefore, you go to the gym and you're going to underperform. Now, you probably don't realise you're underperforming because you've been doing it a long time. Okay? You don't know what you don't know. But when you start introducing a pre-workout meal or a breakfast before training, and then you're obviously utilising that fuel accordingly in a training session, next thing you know, PBs are going up. You've got heightened energy. You're sustaining longer periods of intense training. Your recovery is better. Then you can go again. And this is why you're not maybe progressing in the gym, because you're training under-fueled all the time. So another reason why you should have an early morning meal or a breakfast, depending on the circumstance. It's a common trend. It really is. And it's unfortunate that a lot of people think that they need to skip breakfast. And then there's the other, I'm going on a bit of a tangent here, there's the other way of thinking where people are going to skip breakfast because they want to fast. Okay, and they think if I fast, that's going to accelerate fat loss. And look, in theory it does, absolutely. But if you're skipping breakfast, but you're not calculating the calories for the rest of the day, you're still going to make up the difference by snacking or eating more food. Because if you just put together meal after meal without any form of tracking, without any form of calculation around the quantification of calories, who's to say that you're fasting? It just means you're shortening the hours of your eating time. That's all it is, and that's all fasting is. If you're fasting, say you're fasting, you're doing the 16-8 rule, right? Where you fast for 16 hours and you eat for 8 hours. In those 8 hours, you still need to track, because you still need to know that you're in a deficit. At the end of the day, a calorie deficit is the king of fat loss. If you're not in it, you're not in it, and you're not going to lose weight. It's as simple as that. So when you fast, if you think you're skipping a meal and that's going to be fasting, it technically may not be, because you're actually eating more food in the rest of the day that covers the meal that you skipped, if that makes sense. So the objective is, yes, you can successfully lose weight in a fast, but the rest of the day needs to be calculated so that your 24-hour day, you are still in a deficit. If you're not, then all you're doing is skipping a meal and you're still making up the difference for the rest of the day, and it's not working, so it's a waste of time. So yeah, often people don't even realise that. They just think, oh, I'll just fast until 11 a.m. and then I'll start eating. Doesn't work like that. It does not work like that. But why skip, why not feel fully fueled and fully energetic all day? Why do you want to feel miserable and hungry in the morning? And some people argue, well, I don't. But you don't know. You don't know that. It's the energy you put off. It's the energy you give out. And if other people are feeling that off you, and no one's prepared to say it, then you don't know that you're acting that way, right? But if you start to eat a proper high protein breakfast with carbs, don't be afraid of carbs, with carbs, all of a sudden your energy levels are going to change. They're going to change to be more positive. They're going to change to be more high. They're going to change to outlay a better perspective from yourself to others. And next thing you know, you're going to be bouncing, you're going to be more positive, you're going to have higher energy, and people are going to feed off of that. They're going to realize, wow, what have you done lately? Because you're just bouncing off the walls, you're beaming, you're more active, you're chatting more. It's as simple as having breakfast. That's all it is. It's amazing. Yeah, it really is amazing. And that's why you shouldn't skip breakfast. Doesn't matter what age you are, doesn't matter what stage of life you are, doesn't matter what type of training you do, doesn't matter what type of diet you have. You should not skip breakfast, even under a fast, okay? Because chances are you're not actually fasting. Chances are you're just skipping a meal and then making up for it, like I said before. So skipping breakfast is not an optimal position. And I put this out on social media not that long ago, and the amount of different comments and responses I got was amazing. And a lot of it was, why can't I train fasted? Why can't I train, why can't I skip breakfast and then just make up my calories for the rest of the day? If you're truly tracking and you know where your calories sit and you know where you need to be in terms of a fat loss phase or a maintenance phase, and fasting suits you, great, do it, no problem. But if you don't know, then you're just guessing. You're completely guessing. And if you're training on an empty stomach, your training performance is going to be subpar. I'm here to tell you, and I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're a world-class athlete. You're not going to be training to the highest standard. Do you think an Olympic lifter goes and trains at 7 a.m. without having put some fuel in their body first? No way. If they're getting ready for the biggest event of their lives, they're going to make sure that they tick every box and make sure that they cross every T and dot every I. There's no way they're going to leave nutrition to chance or guesstimate where they're at. They've probably got, seasoned nutritionists at their disposal to help them with their pre-workout meals, their post-workout meals, and the rest of the meals throughout the day to ensure that they are at an optimal position whenever they train and that they peak correctly heading into a major event like the Olympics. So why should we be any different? Sure, we're not Olympians, but we can still optimize our position. We can still optimize our performance. We can still optimize our energy. We can still optimize our training every single day. So don't skip breakfast, whatever you do. And I welcome any criticism. I welcome any feedback. I welcome any questions relating to this topic because it is controversial. I get it. But at the end of the day, calorie deficit is where it needs to be. And whatever that looks like is up to the individual because it does have to be integrated into your lifestyle. Okay, that's step number one. But if you're going to go train on an empty stomach, you do it at your own risk. Okay, that's first step number one. But if you're going to skip breakfast and disrupt the harmony of the rest of your day and then end up snacking throughout the day to bridge that gap because you are hungrier than you should be, well then that's on you as well. But you can make substantial change. You shouldn't eat based on hunger cues. You should eat based on the requirement of the day. And I say this to my kids a lot, and again, they don't listen to their parents, right? But it's not about waiting until you're hungry to eat. It's about formulating and fueling accordingly. So you should fuel yourself every 3 to 4 hours across the day without fail. Without fail, irrespective of whether you're hungry or not. And you may think, oh, but I'm going to put on weight. No, you're not. Not if it's calculated and you're in a deficit, you won't. You're just not used to eating that frequently. That's the difference. You're not used to it. Therefore, your body has adapted to a lower energy source and has stabilized on that. But if you introduce a higher energy source, it's like, I use the analogy often with your metabolism. Think of your metabolism symbolized as a campfire, right? The way we build a campfire out, we've got kindling, we've got paper, might get some pine cones, and then obviously some timber, okay? Then the more kindling, the more paper, the more timber you put on it, the fire gets bigger. It burns more intensely. That is the same as your metabolism. Now, within reason, of course, because if you eat like a pig, well, guess what? You're going to put on body fat. But if you eat in accordance with an increase in calories that's suited to your body type, to your training output, to your daily requirements, and your metabolism is effectively that campfire and you will burn more. That is a fact. So that's why people need to be in an optimal position. And you're not going to achieve that if you're skipping a substantial meal that could be 200, 300, 400 calories. Sure, it may put you in a deficit, but that deficit could be at the repercussion of you underperforming throughout the course of the day as well, or snacking more because you've had this big gap and you haven't fulfilled it with energy. So I hope that makes sense to people. It's a topic that is, like I said, very controversial. Everyone's got their opinion on it. And for those that do skip breakfast, they're hardcore. And they don't want to be told that that is not the way to go because that's what they've done forever. It's what they believe is right, even though there is now a lot of literature, a lot of research to suggest, wrong choice of words, to prove that is not a superior method. Yeah, absolutely. Fasting does carry some benefits for certain people, absolutely. But again, the overall calorie intake within a 24-hour window needs to be in a deficit if you're looking to lose weight or maintain or grow, depending on the circumstance. All right, so I think I have gotten to my point, but thank you once again for tuning in. I really do appreciate it. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please share it across your stories. Please tag myself at Paul's Body Engineering. I welcome any feedback, and also I welcome anyone who wants me to talk about any particular topics. Send me a DM, send me an email, jump on my website and have a look around. You can contact me via my website. If you're interested in any of my coaching services, please jump on there also. But for now, as I say to every client every single day, have a great day.